Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. So I thank you for giving the opportunity. So I am connecting with Kalalgoda Vipassana Meditation Center. Some yogis are also participating. And first we'll pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sannyayattveva aniccatam uditva viparinama viraga nirodham pubbe cheva sanya. Etarahicha sabbha sanya anicca dukkha viparinama dhammati. Dear friends in Dhamma, actually I have taken a particular quote from Attha Sutta, which is available in the Kanda Samyutta, which is dealing with all the five aggregates. And the point that Buddha highlighted there is quite interesting. So the point that he is pointing out there is how one needs to recognize various kinds of suffering, different kinds of worries, different sorrows, lamentations happen within our mind. So when one becomes mindful, so he invites us to sort of doing kind of introspection. Attadipa bhikkhave atta sarana, ananya sarana, dhammadīpa dhamma sarana, ananya sarana, attīpānam bhikkhave bhiratang atta saranānam, ananya saranānam, dhammadīpānam dhamma saranānam, ananya saranānam, yoniso upaparitabba, kim jātika soka parideva dukkha supāyāsa, kim pahotikāti. Now this Pali statement mentioned, now you have to be an island up to yourself. You have to be a refuge unto yourself. There is no any other refuge. You have to keep Dhamma as an island. You have to keep Dhamma as a refuge. There is no any other refuge. So while you are living like this, now you have to do something. What is that? You need to wisely reflect how this Soka, Parideva, Dukkha, Domana, Supayasa are arising, how they are produced. That means how various sorrows, lamentations, suffering, any kind of despair, all that, how is it going to arise? Now, this is a very interesting point that Buddha, in a way, when you are practicing, when you keep yourself as a refuge, when you keep Dhamma as a refuge, so there is some sort of a reflection that we need to do. There is a sort of an investigation that we need to do. So is there any sort of agitation in our mind? Is there any sort of suffering in our mind? Is there any sort of worry in our mind, lamentation in our mind? Am I crying now? Am I lamenting now? So something that Buddha is asking us to looking at. So that the understanding is that one is trying to understand the suffering, the first noble truth. So the first noble truth has to be understood. Dukkhang pariññaya. First noble truth has to be understood. So where are we going to understand it? Within ourselves. So here basically the five aggregates are to be understood, because on the other hand, Buddha mentioned, okay, Panchupada is the suffering. Sankirtana Panchupada. In brief, whenever we cling to five aggregates, we can become sort of under the suffering. So actually, I am going to talk today particularly about the Sanya Khanda, the perception aggregate. So there we need to understand, is there any kind of attachment towards any sign, any perception? So any kind of attitude. So as we discussed even yesterday in Kalangoda, so there are different forms of sanya, different forms of symbols that we start with from the very basic. As a child, probably you can remember how you started in your kindergarten, how you are recognizing the different colors, maybe your teacher showing you different cards. Okay, this is red color, this is blue color, this is white color. So you started in an innocent way, recognizing various colors, and further you are introduced various letters. Okay, this is letter A, this is letter B, this is letter C. So I introduced to vowels, you are introduced to alphabets, then different languages. Then you start recognizing different words. you start speaking and you start making sentences and you start learning grammar, you start different languages. Now, all are, in a way, we can say, in summary, are symbols, different marks, different signs, and all that marks, different signs are representing something, and we are using different names to represent ourselves. And likewise, now we are slowly growing. So we are learning, you are going, progressing, and you are going to different grades now. Maybe you are, when a child being grown, so basically he is learning more and more. He's gathering fair amount of information, many subjects, many information. And since we are in the information technology era, so it's easy to absorb a lot of information. So likewise, now many information is in his mind, and he has a unique name. He may have a unique identification number, maybe even a passport number. And even recently they have introduced a tax file. All that are introduced. So you are becoming quite identifying with all those unique numbers, all those unique names, and you may have a surname, etc., etc. So now we are using them maybe to distinctly recognize ourselves, so that it would be convenient for us to highlight ourselves, to become an individual, and to keep up with ourselves, and to deal with the society, to communicate with others. All that are good. But the unfortunate thing is, all these marks, all these signs, all these names, slowly inculcate in our mind. So they become very much like engraved in our mind, and we start identifying with them. When someone is calling using your name, so you easily get excited. When someone is praising, you easily get elated. When someone is blaming using your name, you feel unhappy. So likewise, the name becomes something very important to you. And you may have a degree, and then you are adding few letters at the end of your name. So likewise, slowly, we are attached to all these symbols, all these names, all these marks. And on top of that, we have various perceptions. Now, what we have discussed so far is the very basics: symbols, marks, signs, letters, names, uh, maybe words, languages, all that are different information. And we are using that heavily. And again, we have different perceptions also. A perception about oneself, perception about one's mother, father, one's teachers, maybe about one's brother, sister, perception about one's friends, maybe at large about a particular society, about a particular country. And so likewise, now we are growing different kinds of perceptions. So perceptions are now deeply engraved in our mind. So you may have a perception about the monks, you may have perceptions about the lay people. At large, you may have a perception about a particular party. So likewise, you can understand, okay, different perceptions are now very much like conditioned to the mind. So mind has become fairly conditioned, fairly colored by the perceptions. Now we are being now driven by the perceptions. We recognize the perceptions, we identify with the perceptions, and we even want to protect those perceptions. And I am going to represent perception. So this is how I perceive. So you are now trying to sort of showcase that. You want to show it, you want to explain it about your perception. You are strongly holding a particular perception. Now, all that makes our mind very complicated. And ultimately, we being trapped in perceptions. As we even discussed yesterday, so ultimately we become even trapped in perceptions. So that's how in this Attadipa Sutta, Buddha mentioned how this Sakkaya Ditthi, the self-identification, personality view happens with respect to perception. Sanyang Attato Samnupassati. So you simply recognize, okay, this perception is myself. Say everyone has a unique name. Okay, here I am. So this is my name. I am Venerable Chandaratana. I am so and so. So I am immediately, directly recognizing, identifying myself with respect to a name, a symbol, a mark, a perception. Sanya vantang vatanam. So that means okay, I have some direct possession towards the perception. Okay, this is my name, this is my perception, this is my idea, this is my attitude. So I have a direct relationships. I own a particular perception. Attaniva sanya. So inside me, there is a perception. So that's another way of looking at it. And fourthly, Buddha mentions sanya vata, where different perceptions altogether represent myself. Inside the perception, so my view is there, myself is there. So the perceptions is a kind of a large thing, and that inside it, somewhere, myself is included. Myself is sort of located. So likewise, in particularly four forms, Buddha said, okay, the Sakkaya Ditthi can be developed. So very much like we are trapped. So it's a vast subject, and we are being trapped in many different ways, many different forms. And if we consider our mind is fairly conditioned, fairly colored, using various perceptions, and sometimes it's quite difficult to change it. But unfortunately, these perceptions subject to change, even though I have a particular attachment, I have a particular view, I have a particular say about a particular perception or even name or even a symbol. So they are not permanent. Unfortunately, they are subject to change. Say you may be driving in a particular road. Say after some time, you might know, okay, the name of the road has changed. Sometimes you miss the road and you might even confuse, and you may end up with going to a different route because the name of the road has changed. But you might like the old name, but unfortunately the name has changed. Probably you may have a perception about a particular person, but that person might have changed. Say you love someone, expecting him or her to give you love, expecting have a proper relationship, but later you might find, okay, he has betrayed, he has changed, he couldn't keep it up, he couldn't maintain the relationship. So the perception that you had about him, the perception you had about her, now have to be changed. You can't keep the perception as it is. So likewise, even though we are attached to perceptions, even though we identify with perceptions, so perceptions themselves doesn't have such kind of an agreement with us. So they are subject to change. So ultimately what happened to us, it generates a lot of unhappiness in ourselves. It generates a lot of sorrow in ourselves. One might even cry, one might even lament, a lot of despair can arise. The perceptions have changed. I can't bear it. I can't even believe it. So I thought that perception is something permanent. It is unique. It is my perception. It is my name. It is my country and all that. But everything is subject to change, and you are going to suffer. So when you are reflecting kind of an introspection, when you are recognizing, so if there is a suffering within you, it could be due to this sort of change in the perception. So actually, all five aggregates are included, described in this sutta. Today, I'm only talking about the perceptions. So whenever there is suffering, whenever there is sorrow, whenever you are crying, lamenting, it could be due to perception. It could be due to a change of a perception. And you might force to change the perception. And you want to keep it as it is. You like to maintain it as a permanent thing, as a permanent entity, but now you are forced to change it because everything has changed. So you were thinking that he's a good person, but now you understood he's not a good person. So quickly I have to change my perception. I had an idea or I had a perception about something. Okay, this is like this, but unfortunately it has changed. Now I have to completely change my perception. As I mentioned, we are using different names, using unique labels and numbers and etc., just for the communication, for the well-being of the society. But time to time, the government change, the political changes are happening, people are fighting and this and that, and all the symbols, all the names, all that also have to be changed. Now, if you consider a particular village, a particular city, what's its old name? It could be entirely different name. if you consider a particular root, a particular word, it might have an entirely different name. Today we have one name, maybe even future, it might change to something different. So likewise, we are in an entirely changing world, but unfortunately, I couldn't understand that. So I am suffering, I am worrying, I am lamenting, I am crying because what I thought as permanent, what I thought as giving me satisfaction, and what I thought which are under my control are not really under my control. So Buddha, in that sense, basically advise us to understand this changing nature, even at the perception level, even at the symbols, even at the signs. Now, that can't be immediately done. So typically, if we consider Satipatthana, so we are simply paying attention to the body that is in the Kayanupassana level. So that is very much we are dealing with the form aggregate. So when you are doing some Vedananupassana, that is into the feeling aggregate. When you are dealing with Chittanupassana, that is particularly into the, say, formations aggregate, Sankhara Khanda, and again in the consciousness aggregate. Because perceptions are very subtle and sometimes they are very deeply rooted in our mind and in a way quite difficult to even recognize. And our memories, our thought formations, all are fairly dependent on the symbols, all these marks, all these signs. On top of that, we have these so-called perceptions. So things are deeply rooted, fairly hidden like. And even when we are interested of something, then whatever the signs, whatever the marks attributed to that person, that particular thing, slowly stored in our mind. So daily we are storing certain perceptions. Daily we are storing certain symbols. So in a way, sometimes we are upgrading, or sometimes we are storing new perceptions, new symbols, new signs. So things are getting in a way complicated. So therefore, it's quite difficult for someone to immediately recognize perceptions. So immediately recognize sanya, symbols available in our mind. But as you are moving forward, as you are refining your attention, understanding is growing, fair chances there that you are able to understand, say, how perceptions are working, how you being sometimes trapped in perceptions, and how perceptions are contributing towards your thinking process, and how sometimes you become victimized to perceptions. So all that is a kind of a very interesting finding. In Dhammanupassana, actually, in the Khanda Pabba, where Buddha described about the five aggregates, reflection about the five aggregates. So they are the perceptions aggregate included. So you can see Buddha ask, okay, basically, iti sanyaya samudaya, iti sanyaya attagamo. So this is a perception, this is a symbol, this is a mark. So that whenever available in the mind at that moment, in the present moment, we are invited to recognize. What that means is that you are sort of looking at your mind. You are trying to understand the mind. So you are maintaining a very careful attention towards your mind, and assume that while you are maintaining a very clear mind, suppose that you have fairly practiced vipassana and you are able even to maintain a clear mind, no even thoughts, your mind is very silent, and it almost has become very clear. So the clarity of the mind has increased. But all of a sudden, suppose that you remember about your friend. Suppose he or she is hospitalized. Immediately a symbol of that person, symbol or mark or a name, a label, maybe his figure, his face, appear in your mind. Can you recognize that moment? Can you recognize in your mind whenever such image is appearing? Now, for you to clearly recognize that, first of all, we need to have a certain amount of clarity in our mind. we can say it's a kind of a concentrated mind. It's not that concentrated in the sense that we are focusing our attention very strictly to a particular object. Rather, the clarity of mind is available. So you have a clear vision in the mind. So while you have such clear vision, fair amount of clarity in the mind, all of a sudden that friend, his image, came to your mind. Now, immediately what happens to us? So we feel unhappy because you know that he is suffering now, he is going to a cancer, he's in this particular hospital, and what's really going to do? Shall I call a doctor? So all these thoughts are now formed. Now, that is a typical situation. So whenever a sign, whenever an image of someone coming to our mind, we immediately attribute a person to that sign, and with respect to that sign, we have some
We can't. Bhante, we can't hear you now.
sorry, I being disconnected. Hope now you can hear me.
Can now.
Okay. So basically, so while we are vigilant about our mind, so probably you can recognize, okay, whenever you remember someone, that particular person's image at each level, immediately I am attributing a person to that image, so and so. He's hospitalized, my friend is suffering, he is going through a terminal cancer. What's going to happen? Shall I call a doctor? May I help him? So many different ways I am thinking. So that's the problem. Now, using our Patipatthana practice, mindfulness practice, in one sense, before sort of recognizing perceptions, in that sense, we have to calm down the mind. We have to tranquilize the mind. We have to minimize thinking. We have to minimize conceptual proliferation. That should be a must. So as a practitioner, you need to understand, okay, too much thinking makes things worse, makes things my mind crowded, tangled. So I have to minimize thinking. Okay, you are recognizing thoughts. Fine. So you recognize, okay, there are many thoughts. Okay, let them go. Okay, friend is there. Okay, nothing to worry. He or she is under medication. He or she is being well after, so I don't need to worry. Or somehow you are convincing yourself and calming down yourself. Or else, if you are further developed, probably you can recognize, okay, there are many thoughts. I don't need to encourage. Let it be, let them go. And I can abandon these thoughts because they are merely thoughts. So even that level you can operate. And so the thoughts are abandoned. So slowly, the amount of thoughts become less and less. Now slowly, the clarity of mind improves. Once a while, a thought comes, and that also you recognize as a mere thought, and you are not being trapped, you are not being victimized, and you are not being driven by thoughts, you are not feeding thoughts, but slowly, thoughts are diminished, thoughts are very much like disappeared. Now almost like your mind has become fairly silent. So first of all, we have to reach here. Now, when assume now you are there. Mind is very clear, no thoughts, no confusion. You are in the present moment. You are in a way quite silent. While you are like that, assume that same image appears in your mind. Probably now you have a fair chance to recognize that as an image, that as a symbol, that as a kind of a mark. And probably you can even recognize, okay, my mind is trying to give a name to it, and my mind is trying to give a perception to it, I have certain like, I have certain love, I have certain memory, a certain history towards this person. But what is having actually is a perception. What is having actually here is a mental image. So can I keep it as it is without complicating the process, without fabricating the process, without fantasizing, without starting a story? Can I keep image as an image? Understand, okay, this is a mere image, this is a mental image appeared in my mind. It is not really a person. Maybe you can say, okay, it's an image belonging to someone or something. But that's a different story. So that's also I'm trying to minimize. Okay, in the mind, currently what is available is a mere image. So if we are able to keep it like that, without feeding it, without promoting it, without adding our own stuff into it, without adding our own perceptions into it, then this image can't live there for a long time. Because we are the ones feeding it, we are the ones strengthening it, we are the ones personifying it, but now we have stopped it. So this image can't survive by itself. Now the image starts disappearing. Probably if you have clear mindfulness, if you have this clear vision, probably now you can see, okay, image appeared in the mind. I didn't name it. I didn't maybe label it. I didn't start thinking about it. I didn't attribute a person into it. Rather, I was quite wise. I know it's an image. So I stepped back and I was watching it. Then it has disappeared. So basically, in that sense, various sanya, different forms of sanya, different forms of symbols are there. Now I have taken a simple example of a rupa sanya. Similarly, saddha sanya is also there. Different, different symbols of certain sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles. It's a kind of a complicated subject in a way, but for easy understanding, I feel it's easy to take sanya in the sense of images. That's in the rupa sanya. So those rupa sanya, whenever appearing in our mind, so mind becomes somewhat crowded. Now, say for example, in your mind, when you are recognizing, how many images are appearing in your mind? Suppose about your husband, about your mother, about your father, about your wife, about your children, about your country, about your government, about the president, about the prime minister, about the chief minister, whoever that's in this thing. So our minds are fairly crowded with so many images. On top of those images, we have so much of perceptions. So mind has fairly crowded, fairly filled, we are being burdened with various signs, symbols, and perceptions. And now through Vipassana, so one has understood, okay, rather than make me confused, let me keep the mind very simple, unburdened, maintaining clarity of the mind, maintaining a very clear mind. That mind is not thinking, but I'm fully aware of it. And time to time, various images are appearing in the mind, yes, but I can understand, okay, this is an image. This is a perception. Probably in top of that image, okay, I can add the perception. Probably I have a perception, I have a stored perception about this image if I am attributing this image to a particular person. Say, for example, taking the previous example, say your good friend is hospitalized and you are now meditating and you are maintaining a silent mind somehow. You have achieved that, but all of a sudden, his or her image appeared in your mind. One situation is that you're being driven by that. Another situation is, no, you are not driven by that, but you carefully understood, okay, this is an image. This image has certain roots coming from that particular person. That person is my friend. I have a certain sort of affection towards that friend. I have certain perception towards that friend. That's an entirely different story. But without going to that end, okay, now I am keeping this image as an image. I am trying to keep image as an image. so that ultimately it will disappear. So basically, so if we are dealing like this, so we may understand all these perceptions, all these images, all these symbols are mere symbols, are mere names, are mere labels. We are the ones personifying them. We are the ones strengthening them. We are the ones attributing some significance or importance to them. But once we stop that, they lose their power. And they come, they stay for a while, and then they go. So you again have a clear mind. You again have a clarity of the mind. So likewise, so here another sense we can include here. So more and more, if you are doing like this, so Buddha mentioned in this Adhika Sutta, Sanyayateka Bhikkhave Aniccatam Viditva. Now you understand, okay, these symbols are impermanent. These signs are impermanent. They come and go. I can keep my mind free from them. Viparinama Virāga Nirodha. So you understand, okay, they also fade away, they also change. And sometimes now I am able to maintain some sort of discussion towards them. Rather than I am contributing or fantasizing them, now I have certain discussion. I can step back and watch them. How they fade away, they completely cease. The mind has the complete clarity. It's a very transparent kind of mind, not being corrupted by various symbols, not being corrupted by various images. Mind has a lot of space now, because all the different images are kept aside. So your spaciousness of the mind is available. Now, Ubbejeva Sanya Etara is a Sabbha Sanya. Now Buddha even expand it to the previous old Sanya. Okay, now you have worked out with respect to the present Sanya, at the moment, what is available, what are the symbols appearing in your mind, you have worked it out. But now Buddha inferentially takes it to the next level. Ubbecheva Sanya Etarita Sabbha Sanya. Now you understood all these perceptions are impermanent. All these symbols are impermanent. All these marks, signs are impermanent that you understood at the present moment. So you can understand, okay, all that previous symbols, all that previous marks, previous images, that all are impermanent. If I'm going to have in the future any kind of samnya, any kind of symbols, any kind of signs, any kind of marks, on top of that, if I build another perception, that's also going to be impermanent. Aniccan dukkhang viparinama dhammanti. And you understand, okay, they are all impermanent. They can't provide me enough satisfaction. I have no much control over them. Evametang yathabhutang sammappaññāya passatu. When you know them properly, when you know them clearly, soka parideva dukkha domana supāyāsa te pahiyanti. Now Buddha say, slowly, slowly, the importance that we have given to the symbols, the importance that we have given to those signs, the importance that we have given to those perceptions become less and less. Because you understood, you have clearly seen their true nature. So now, when they are changing, you are not suffering. Because you understood their true nature. You know, you accept, you have seen clearly that their true nature is impermanent. They can't provide me satisfaction. They have no much control over them. You've seen that, you have tested that. Within your mind, you have thoroughly understood that. Now you haven't provided enough importance to them, any value to them, because you know they are merely perceptions, they are merely signs, they are merely symbols. So when they are now changing, you are not crying, you are not lamenting, because you know they are impermanent. You understood. So when they have changed, when they have gone, you are not crying, you have no agitation, because you know thoroughly, and you even allow the mind to be clear without storing much. Previously, we are, stuffing our mind, storing, gathering, pretty much like many layers of information, a lot of information. And now you can't even recognize which one is the good one, which one is the correct one. Utter confusion. But now the mind appear like fairly spacious. Like say you had a house which was filled with so many furniture, a lot of garbage, a lot of stuff, and you can't find out where you have kept your spectacle, where you kept your, say, a car key, where you have kept your letter, because everything is very much like, confused. One day, say you take a leave and you want to completely clean your house, and you are keeping everything at proper place. All the garbage you are throwing out. You have done a very good job. Now you find, okay, a lot of space is available in my house. Previously, no space at all. Many years of unnecessary things were stuffed in the house. But now after cleaning, you find, okay, it is very spacious. Now I can even put new good furniture inside the house because now a lot of space is available. Similar thing happens in the mind. So we are stuffing many unnecessary things. We are storing many unnecessary things. We are memorizing, knowing or unknowingly, many unnecessary things. So mind become corrupted, mind become polluted, mind become conditioned. No space, spilled out. Now through Vipassana, we have de-learning the process. De-learning process has happened. Unloading has happened. Purification has happened. Silence has happened. Tranquility has happened. And ultimately, complete clarity has happened. You may end up with a very spacious mind, very clear, very spacious, very silent, tranquil, and you may even enjoy that. And so Buddha say, now aparitasang sukham virati. Now Buddha say, okay, without agitation, without such kind of corruption, without any kind of a sorrow, lamentation, so you are living happily. Sukha viharam vikutadangani buddhoti uchati. So Buddha say, so the person who lives like that, who is maintaining such kind of a mind, is quenched in that respect. That means to that level, to that understanding, to that level of understanding, you are very much like quenched. No inner burning, no inner agitation, no sorrows, no lamentation, no crying. So you are peaceful. You have a very peaceful mind, clear mind. Now, if we are able to maintain such mind, so we can live happily. But we have to be vigilant. We have to be fairly mindful. Because the moment that we lose our wisdom, we get trapped. Again, that person's image may appear in your mind. Now, immediately you might get trapped because the wisdom is not yet thorough enough. Probably you might get trapped. But if we are again and again practicing it, again and again sharpening our faculties, again and again sharpening our wisdom, so the possibility of being sort of deluded become less and less. Instead, the clarity of mind may improve, the wisdom of the mind may improve, and spaciousness of the mind may be intact, and we are able to maintain a clear mind for a long time, peaceful mind for a long time. So at that state, Buddha mentioned, so what is the state of the mind? It's a beautiful verse mentioned in the Lahavivada Sutta. Na sanya sanyi, na visanya sanyi, no sanyi, na vibhuta sanyi. Evam sameta vibhoyo sanya nedahi pancha. Sanya sanyi. So Buddha mentioned, so you are not perceiving any kind of typical symbols, any kind of typical mark. As I mentioned, you are not in your mind at that moment. There are no symbols, there are no images, there are no signs of anything mundane. Say about your mother, about your father, about your children, about the husband, about the wife, about your car, about the politics. All those mundane kind of, the trivial symbols are not in your mind. That doesn't mean that you are completely distorted your perception. So basically, your mind is not disturbed. You are not under any kind of a, hallucination or you are any kind of a medication. Rather, it is not that you have become sort of fainted. Rather, you are vigilant. And nopi asanyi. So this is not a kind of a asanya state. That means through a very high concentration, all the perceptions, all the symbols are suppressed. It is not like that. So you are living harmoniously, you are living in the present moment. You can hear sounds, you can smell, taste, and all that symbols, whatever, all are outside, those are available. If you want, you can look at them. If you want, you can recognize them. There is no any prohibition. But if you don't need, okay, you can keep your mind spacious. Nopi asanyi, na vibhuta sanyi. That doesn't mean that you have destroyed all the perceptions, that you have erased all your memories, like dementia. It is not like that either. The next moment, if you want, okay, you can talk, you can imagine, or if you want, you can write a letter, you can talk, etc. So it is not that you have completely destroyed the perception, destroyed the symbols. If necessary, you can take it. But currently, your mind is very free. No old stuff, no old images, no old typical perceptions or thoughts or symbols influencing the mind, invading the mind, and you are utterly mindful. And again, you are not with a very high concentration either. You are living on the ground, well aware of what's happening. Evan samitasa vibhuti. Then Buddha say, okay, none of the typical mundane symbols are now not appearing in your mind. Name and form is not appearing in the consciousness. You are not tangled with name and form. On other terms, in deep sense, the consciousness is not tangled with name and form. Consciousness has become kind of luminous. Sanya nidana papancha sankha. Because we understood, okay, sanya, these perceptions, these symbols, these marks, has a deep influence towards making a lot of papancha. Because these symbols are the source to generate a lot of concepts. Concepts generate a lot of thoughts. Thoughts ultimately take us to papancha, to the conceptual proliferation. So having understood the danger, so you have minimized the conceptual proliferation, minimize unnecessary thinking, overthinking, you have kept the mind very silent, you have developed a fair amount of mindfulness, you have achieved clarity of the mind, and now seeing the danger, you are keeping some distance from these different names, different symbols, different signs, perceptions, but you are free to take them when it is necessary. Okay, this is the kind of information or thoughts I like to share with you. Some insight I like to share with you. And with that, I like to conclude the Dhamma sermon today. And if you have any questions, we can spend a few minutes answering those questions.
Thank you very much, Bhante.
Thank you very much, Bhante. That
There's an echo here.
there's an echo here.
I think can we have any questions? I have some on the chat. I think Bhante can see them. Quite a few questions.
Okay. Okay, someone has asked, are you going to read it?
I have again lost it. I had it. I can read it. Most Venerable Bhante, perceptions are signs and recognitions in the mind for various things. Compared to a mirage, can the perception based upon the noble triple gem be compared to a mirage?
That's a very interesting question. So actually, according to the suttas, according to the Dhamma, so rather than immediately taking out all the perceptions, Buddha even invites us to sort of develop some, useful perceptions or beneficial perceptions or proper perceptions. What we had is sort of harmful and improper or falsified type of perceptions. So instead of that, Buddha invites us to develop a proper perception. So that is talking in the, that famous Girimananda Sutta. So there particularly talks about 9 such perceptions, say Anicca Sanya, Anatta Sanya, all that are in a way, it is not yet talking about the direct understanding, but even at the perception level, you have a certain perception. Okay, you know that things are permanent, not permanent. Things are impermanent. Things are suffering. Things are non-self. Still, you haven't directly know them, directly experience them, but you are developing it as a valuable perception, as a correct perception, because our mind tends to operate entirely differently. So those are the ones called vipallasa, where we have certain distorted perceptions, incorrect perceptions. When things are really impermanent, we presume things are permanent. When things are unable to provide us satisfaction, we think, things can provide us satisfaction. When things are inherently non-self, we think, things are governable, I have certain control, things may have their soul, self inside it. So all that are wrong perceptions. And when inherently things are not so beautiful, but unfortunately we may think, things are beautiful. That means anicce nicca sanya, dukkhe sukha sanya, anattani atta sanya, asubhe subha sanya. So those are called the inversions or distortions, vipallasa. Now, instead of that, probably one can have the proper perceptions, correct perceptions, and those are also valid things that we can sort of try to build in our mind. But later, and when you are directly seeing the impermanence, when you are directly seeing the unsatisfactoriness, when you are directly seeing the non-self, slowly, so your mind has to become more spacious and say more clarity has to be available. And more, you don't need to forcefully maintain a particular perception. Rather, the wisdom itself may slowly safeguard the mind.
The same question has a little bit more, Bhante, whether the perceptions based upon the triple gem is the belief based on Shraddha and experiential knowledge of a yogi that a yogi achieves. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why this perception subject is not immediately taken. So don't try it immediately. So we need a good perception. We need a valid perception, and we are being driven by that. And slowly, when you are reaching a fair amount of understanding, then only we can recognize all these, the very minor contributions. It's very much like this. Now, say, for example, suppose now, since doctor is also here, suppose that you want to do a heart surgery, but you can't immediately touch the heart. You may be opening different layers and slowly reaching the problem. And only at the end, you are precisely pointing the problem. But before that, you have to go through different layers. So all these different layers are in a way necessary for the, the protection. So likewise, we need certain perceptions, as you said, based on the faith, we need certain perceptions to continue. But as we are moving forward, as we are slowly maturing in the Dhamma, so probably the mind may develop to a level, the saddha is there, but now more than saddha, you have direct experience. It is not a mere faith now, but through direct experience, you have seen it. Say, for example, previously you heard that Buddha is telling, this body is impermanent. You didn't know that. You might even, when you are a young person, you might even thought, this is really beautiful. Why Buddha is talking that this is not so good? Like what happened to Rupananda, or like what happened to Kema. So they didn't even go to see the Buddha, because Buddha was telling, this body is not permanent. But Kema is really a beautiful woman. She's the queen of King Sal. And she was very much like conceited with the beauty of her body. So she didn't even go to see the Buddha. Now, instead of doing that, assume that someone is telling, okay, this is like this. Even though you are beautiful like this, it won't last for a long time. After, say, 40 years, 50 years, the body would look like this. So one would give the proper perception. So a wise person may start understanding that. That's one level of perception. In a way, it's a much better perception, much useful, beneficial, correct perception. Later, now based on that, assume that you have a lot of faith towards the Buddha. Still, you are 20 years, still you are 25 years, you are very beautiful, but you have a lot of faith in the Buddha, assuming, believing, okay, yes, Buddha has told the truth. It's still in the faith level. Perception is based on the faith level. But later, assume that you start practicing the Dhamma, you start developing Vipassana. Slowly, you may start deeply understanding the impermanent nature. Not only the body, even many, subtle phenomena, you deeply understand the impermanent nature. It is not a hearsay. It is not mere book knowledge. Now it is a very sharp experiential knowledge. It becomes an insight in yourself. Now you have a perception towards the Buddha, kind of a gratitude towards the Buddha, because he has seen that clearly and taught me or sort of warned me or thoroughly revealed that truth. Now I also understand it. I also have seen it directly. Now you have a lot of faith towards the Buddha. It is now not based on the mere faith, but it is now based on the facts. So therefore, we can't say it is mere faith that we are totally dependent on. At the beginning, it's a kind of superficial kind of faith is there, but later on, it's more become factual, more become experiential, and then become more and more stronger.
Samantha, would you like to? Why don't you ask your question, Samantha, because it's very long. Can you can unmute yourself?
Yes, Dr. Manuri, I can.
Yes.
Let me just. Thank you, Bhante. That was a very interesting concept and difficult concept to understand as well, perception. So my question is now, when you have perception, along with that particular perception, the feeling or emotion associated with it could arise at the same time, simultaneously. So then you got two things overlapping, the sign, and then you got the emotion. It gets a bit complicated. So do you sort of like, how do you reduce the suffering? Do you look at, so if you see but through the practice, the impermanent nature of the perception, as Bhante explained, through your meditation, then does the emotion also fall off as soon as you sort of like see the sign, so you can subdue the emotion, not subdue, but you can control the emotion that you won't suffer. And also to reduce the perception, my next question was, Bhante, should one superimpose that with the top, with the wisdom that Buddha actually explained, like with some sati sampajana all the time, so that you see the perception or the sign not as a label, you see, break it down to the reality of the elements, the four or whatever elements, and all the five aggregates, and that sort of adapt, that right view. Is that how you one could? Yeah, Bhante, that was my question. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, definitely. You are quite correct. Actually, the same question is asked by even Venerable Mahakottita from Venerable Mahasariputta, explained in the Mahavedalla Sutta. So there the question is asked, are these very much like interconnected? You know that the feelings, with respect to those feelings, we get various emotions and then various perceptions coming from various sanya, and then the knowing part, the wisdom part, the vijnana part. In other terms, Vedana, Sanya, Vijnana, do they have direct relationship? On other terms, in terms of their activity, the feeling that you are recognizing certain feelings, and then you try to recognize what I have this particular feeling. Yang vedeti tang sanjanati. So when there is a feeling, you are invited to recognize the perception part, the recognition part, and then accordingly you are trying to thoroughly understand it. So vijanati, where you are trying to deeply understand, trying to investigate. So therefore, when according to this Mahavedara Sutta, Yantaso vedeti tang sanjanati, yang sanjanati tang vijanati. Tasma ime dhamma sansartha no visansartha. So Venerable Sariputta highlights, when one feels, accordingly one wants to recognize. When one is recognizing, then one may wants to thoroughly analyze, thoroughly investigate. So therefore, these three phenomena are fairly connected. That means the feelings, perceptions, and the vijnana are fairly connected. Now that means, so as we are moving forward, so feelings have to become mere feelings which are not producing too much of emotions. Symbols have to be mere symbols which are not promoting too much of perceptions. Previously, what happened? Now, whenever there is a feeling, I start drawing on that. I start like with it. I want to have that. I like it really. I want to promote that feeling. I want to have it repeatedly again and again. So ultimately, I am thinking, I am growing, and ultimately it becomes a huge emotion in myself. But if I am able to minimize it, if I am able to reduce it, so that I am able to understand its early stage, okay, it is a mere feeling. Okay, it is a very pleasant feeling. True that I have a desire towards that pleasant feeling. Yeah, I am now trying to minimize that desire. I am trying to say, control that desire, because I already sort of complicated that at a previous occasion. Let me try to work it out right now. So I have some experience. Say now, whenever that feeling arises, now you are trying to, in a way, avoid generating many thoughts onto it, building too much perceptions into it, avoiding building up many emotions into it. Rather, you are keeping the feeling as it is. You know feeling as feeling. It's a pleasurable feeling, it's a pleasant feeling, it's a painful feeling. On top of painful feeling, you are not crying. On top of painful feeling, you are not adding your own stuff. You are trying to keep painful feeling as painful feeling. Similarly, when it comes to, say, a mental image in our mind, so as someone has mentioned, this is a mirage. It's not truly a person, it is a mental image. So you are very quick in a way, very vigilant, have a penetrative wisdom. Okay, it's a mere image. Okay, let me keep it as it is without building up my perception, without adding many thoughts into it. So likewise, as you have pointed out, so when we are working like this, so the emotions can't come to a level, come to an overwhelming level. You can't be driven by emotions. Rather, you may be able to disentangle them or unentangle them at its early stage. Before it becomes a kind of emotion, you are able to understand its, intricacies, its contributing factors, and you minimize that slowly, so that you keep it as it is, without making it, developing it to the emotion level. Similarly to the perception level.
Thank you, Bhante. That's really helpful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah.
Bhante, can I ask one question? Yesterday I happened to see.
Sure.
Yesterday I happened to see in an article that somebody sent in for publication 3 gateways to Nibbana. And one of they were signless, desireless liberation, which I thought was through getting rid of tanha. He was basing all this, the topic was on the dependent origination. So the one was desireless liberation. that is getting rid of tanha, I believe. Then signless liberation and voidness liberation.
Yeah.
So I think that is what Bhante was trying to
Hmm.
tell us. Or not trying.
Correct, very correct. That stands for, that's very correct. That is quite valid to this discussion. Thanks for pointing it out. Now, signless liberation is directly related with the impermanence. So when one seeing how things are quickly arising and passing away in a very rapid succession, you can't pick signs. You can't recognize, okay, whether it is a blue color or red color or, what is the shape. You can't recognize. Or you can't even recognize whether it is a pleasurable feeling or painful feeling or equanimous feeling. You may recognize, okay, it's a mere feeling. I don't know what's exactly the type of feeling, but it's some kind of a feeling. Say, if you are trying to recognize thoughts, okay, thoughts are coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. You can't follow up them. Rather, you understand, okay, they are very quickly, disappearing, quickly disintegrating. I can't even find out what is the content of it, where thoughts are quickly disappearing. Now, slowly, your mind is unable to pick the signs. In order for you to pick the signs, it has to last for some time. Now, say, for example, on the old cameras, say, when you want to capture a picture, you ask the person to be quiet, don't move yourself, okay, be like a statue. Then only I can take the picture. So the object has to be very much stable, permanent. If it's going to change, then I can't capture the picture. Similarly, when things are quickly changing, quickly arising and passing away, so the mind unable to capture the picture, unable to get the signs. So ultimately what happens, all those images disappearing, ultimately they disappear, the mind become released because signless. So it is unable to pick the signs. So it is being trapped because of this picking of the signs. And these signs have made a great influence to the mind. But now it is reaching to a state that things are very transient. As a result of that, you can't pick a sign. So the mind being released because there are no signs. So the signless concentration, what we call as the animitta samadhi, is produced particularly when things are quickly passing away, quickly almost like disappearing, disintegrating and disappearing. So then the signs are not available. So the mind can't hold on something. Signs are essential for something to hold on. So without signs, you can't hold on. Without signs, you can't grasp. If there are no signs, you can't grasp. So important. Signs are so important for the mind to grasp something. When signs are unable to pick, mind becomes released.
But in childhood, as Bhante said, from childhood onwards, the more signs we put in, Ita Mangala Karuna. Bahu Satyancha Sippancha.
So that's the thing. When it comes to Vipassana, we have to relearn a fair amount of information because, I mean, if we are gathering only the necessary, useful, valuable information, that's all right at least. But unfortunately, it is not only the essential, valuable stuff that we are gathering, storing. A huge load of unnecessary information is also gathered, stored. All that has to be abandoned, all that has to be unloaded. Then when the boat is empty, if you are the only rider, you can quickly cross over. If your boat is filled with a lot of unnecessary stuff, you might even get into trouble because too much heavy things are there for you to carry across. So that's why Buddha mentioned, okay, Sincha bhikkave imang navang sitta me lahu messati. So monks, you got to unload all your minds. When your mind is with less thinking, and we can add even less signs, you can quickly go to the next show, the other show.
So voidness liberation is
Yeah, that is the sunyata. Yeah, sunyata, when one understands there is no self, there is no governability, there is no any inner core, nothing substantial, and there is no soul as such. So when nothing is there, so it become empty. Seeing that nothing is important or nothing substantial, there is no inner core, inner self available. So then mind loses the grip, loses the grasping. So these are the three doors, as you have mentioned: animitta vimokkamukha, appanihita vimokkamukha, and sunyata vimokkamukha. The signless door of liberation, the desireless door of liberation, and the emptiness or voidness door of liberation.
there is one last question, Bhante. Bhante, you now mentioned samadhi helping to experience the signless. Can you say more about this, please?
Yeah, now when there are no signs in the mind, when the clarity is there, suppose that you are maintaining that for some time. So you are able to maintain a very clear mind for 5 minutes, very clear mind for 10 minutes, very clear mind for 15 minutes. Now we are not picking any signs. Now we are not allowing the mind to get tangled. You're not remembering or putting any new signs. As much as possible, you are maintaining that clarity longer and longer. So then it becomes a samadhi. What we call the animitta samadhi. Some details are there in the Mahavedala Sutta again. So sabba nimittanam amanasikaram. So all different symbols, all different signs, all the languages, names, people's images, all that you are not taking in. So you are maintaining a clear mind as much as possible. Then that becomes a samadhi, where there are no objects, where there are no images, no signs, no symbols, but mind is, in a way we can say, quite luminous. Say a fair amount of wisdom is there, clarity is there, mindfulness is there, awareness is there. You're not sleeping, by the way.
Thank you, Bhante, for sermon, which is on very penetrative wisdom and aspects of that. So with that, since there are no other questions, we think we can terminate the meeting. We have much merit to Bhante and also to all the recreants who have, we were able to join them in this session. Bhante, shall we end then with the usual way? I would just like to make one announcement about next week's talk, 6th April, Saturday, as usual, 4:30. It's Sravasti, Bhante Sravasti Dhammika of Australia, and it's a very interesting topic. How do we explain Buddha's miracles? Like the miracle of maybe walking as he was born and the lotuses, and he's going to bring up all those and try to explain. So, and actually explain and see, and also because he's very well versed in the Tripitaka, whether these things are in the Tripitaka or not also. So that's the next week's thing. Shall we terminate, Bhante, with transferring merit to the Devas and the departed?
Yeah, sure. So we'll recite the traditional verses since we are gathered here and spend fair amount of time discussing various suttas and trying to understand Buddha's deep teachings, and again trying to sort of practice and overcoming various doubts and trying to develop the wisdom. So all that has generated a fair amount of merits. We'll share all these merits with all the past relatives, all celestial beings, and whoever in need of merits. And we wish these merits help us also to understand Buddha's teaching and to be free from suffering. We'll recite the traditional verses. Ettavatacha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya එත්තාවතා ච අම්හෙහි සම්බතං පුඤ්ඤ සම්පදං සම්මේ බුතා අනුමෝදන්තු සබ්බ සම්පatti සිද්ධියා එත්තාවතා ච අම්හෙහි සම්බතං පුඤ්ඤ සම්පදං සබ්බේ සත්තා අනුමෝදන්තු සබ්බ සම්පatti සිද්ධියා ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ශාසනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු දේශනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු මම් පරං ඉදං වෝ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ඉදං වෝ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ඉදං වෝ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ